I, 32F, was on a family vacation that was supposed to be perfect. My husband, Mark, 34M, and I had rented a large house by the beach. We invited his entire family, his parents, his sister, his cousins, and his Aunt Clara. The sun was bright. The ocean was a beautiful shade of blue. Everything looked like a postcard, but a perfect picture can hide many ugly things. I had learned that lesson over the years of being married into his family. There were tensions and old resentments that simmered just beneath the surface. I always tried my best to smooth things over. I played the part of the happy, easygoing daughter-in-law. It was exhausting, but I believed it was necessary for peace. I thought that if I was just nice enough, just accommodating enough, they would eventually accept me. I was wrong. Aunt Clara was the main source of the trouble. She had a special kind of cruelty, one that she disguised as concern. She would say something hurtful and then pat your arm and say, "I'm only telling you this because I love you." She had never approved of me. She thought Mark could have done better. She made this clear in 100 small ways. A backhanded compliment about my dress. A comment on how my career must make it hard to be a good wife. I always smiled and changed the subject. I told myself her words didn't matter. I told myself she was just an unhappy woman trying to make others unhappy too. Mark always told me to ignore her. "That's just how she is," he would say. "Don't let her get to you." It was easy for him to say. She adored him. He was her favorite nephew. She never aimed her poison at him. We were all sitting around the pool on the third day of the vacation. The air was warm and smelled of salt and sunscreen. The younger cousins were splashing in the water. The adults were lounging in chairs, sipping cold drinks. It felt peaceful. For a moment, I let myself believe that this trip could be different. Maybe we could all just get along. Maybe the beautiful setting would soften everyone's edges. Mark was across the pool, talking to his father. He was laughing. It was a good sound. I felt a wave of affection for him. Despite his family, I loved him. I thought our marriage was strong. I thought we were a team. Then, Aunt Clara moved her lounge chair next to mine. The plastic legs scraped against the concrete patio. The sound was jarring. It cut through the happy noise of the afternoon. She settled into the chair with a sigh. She was wearing a large, floppy hat and dark sunglasses. I could not see her eyes, but I could feel them on me. I braced myself for a comment. I expected something about my swimsuit or the book I was reading. I was ready with a polite, meaningless response. She leaned in close, as if to share a secret. Her voice was a low whisper, but it was sharp, like a shard of glass. "Your husband is cheating," she said. She did not say it with sadness or sympathy. She said it with a small, tight smile on her lips. It was a smile of pure satisfaction. It was the smile of someone who had just won a game I did not even know I was playing. The words hung in the air between us. They felt unreal. The sounds of the pool, the laughter, the splashing, all of it faded away. There was only her voice, her smile, and the terrible thing she had just said. My first feeling was confusion. I thought I must have misheard her. The idea was so absurd, so out of place in the middle of this sunny afternoon. I stared at her. I waited for her to laugh and say she was joking. I waited for her to say something else that would make sense of it all. But she just kept smiling, that cold, triumphant smile. She had delivered her blow, and now she was waiting to watch me crumble. I felt a cold dread spread through my chest. It was a feeling I had never experienced before. It was the feeling of the ground giving way beneath my feet. I looked over at Mark again. He was still talking to his father. He had his phone in his hand. He was scrolling through it while he talked. He was angled slightly away from everyone, as if to shield the screen. A perfectly normal thing to do. But now, after what Clara had said, it looked suspicious. It looked secretive. Every normal action suddenly seemed to have a hidden, sinister meaning. Was he smiling at a message from someone else? Was he making plans? My mind started racing, filling in the blanks with terrible possibilities. I turned back to Clara. I tried to keep my voice steady. "What did you say?" I asked. My voice sounded thin and shaky to my own ears. "You heard me," she said, her smile widening just a little. "I thought you should know. It's the right thing to do. Families should be honest with each other. Her words about honesty were a mockery. There was nothing honest or kind about what she was doing. This was an attack. This was her ultimate victory in her long campaign against me. She wanted to destroy my marriage, and she was enjoying every second of it. I felt a surge of anger, hot and fierce. How dare she sit there and say such a thing with such pleasure? I wanted to scream at her. I wanted to call her a liar and a monster. But I didn't. I looked at her, and I saw the anticipation in her face. She was waiting for the drama. She was waiting for me to cry, to yell, to make a scene. She wanted to be the center of a storm of my creation. And in that moment, I decided I would not give her the satisfaction. I would not fall apart for her entertainment. I took a slow, deep breath. I forced myself to be calm. I made my face a blank mask. "That's a terrible thing to say, Clara," I said. My voice was quiet, but it was firm. "And I don't believe you." She shrugged, a small, dismissive gesture. "Believe what you want," she said. "But I've seen the signs. I'm just trying to help you." She leaned back in her chair and took a sip of her drink. She was done. She had planted the poison. Now all she had to do was wait for it to work. I stood up. I could not sit next to her for one more second. I needed to get away. "Excuse me," I said. I walked away from the pool. I went back into the house. The house was cool and quiet. I went into the bedroom Mark and I were sharing. I closed the door. I leaned against it, and my body started to shake. The calm I had projected was gone. I was left with the raw, ugly reality of her words. "Your husband is cheating." I replayed the scene in my mind. Her smile, her voice, her confidence. Was it possible? Was Mark, my husband, the man I loved and trusted, capable of such a betrayal? I had never had any reason to doubt him before. Our marriage wasn't perfect. We had arguments like any couple. But I had always believed in his love for me. I had always believed we were solid. Clara's words had cracked that foundation. Doubt was a poison, and she had just injected it straight into my heart. I sat on the edge of the bed. I tried to think logically. Clara hated me. She would do anything to hurt me. This could just be a lie. A very cruel, very effective lie. That was the most likely explanation. But what if it wasn't? What if she was telling the truth? How would she know? The question circled in my mind. How would she know something so secret, so devastating? I stayed in that room for a long time. I could hear the muffled sounds of the family outside. Laughter. Music. It all sounded like it was coming from another world. My world had shrunk to the size of this room and the terrible question that filled it. I had to know the truth. I could not go on living with this uncertainty. I had to find out for myself. And I had to do it without letting anyone, especially Clara, know what I was doing. I would not give her the satisfaction of seeing me suffer. My pain was my own, but my revenge, if it was necessary, would be something she would never forget. That evening, the doubt started to grow roots. It was a small, dark seed that Clara had planted, and every little thing Mark did made it sprout. At dinner, he kept his phone on the table, face down. He had never done that before. He always said it was rude. When it buzzed, he would pick it up quickly and glance at the screen before putting it back down. He did this 3 times during the meal. Each time, a knot of anxiety tightened in my stomach. I wanted to ask him who was texting him. I wanted to demand to see his phone. But I couldn't. Not with his whole family sitting there. Not with Clara watching me with her knowing eyes. I tried to act normal. I joined in the conversations. I smiled and laughed in all the right places. But inside, I felt like I was screaming. I felt like a fraud, sitting there pretending everything was fine. Mark seemed a little distant. He wasn't as engaged in the conversation as usual. He seemed preoccupied. Or was I just imagining it? Was I now twisting every innocent action to fit the narrative Clara had given me? I felt like I was losing my mind. Later that night, I could not sleep. I lay in bed, listening to the sound of Mark's steady breathing beside me. He had fallen asleep almost instantly. I envied him his peace. My mind was a chaotic storm of suspicion and fear. I kept seeing Clara's smug smile. I kept hearing her words. I got out of bed. I needed some water. I needed to clear my head. I walked quietly out of the bedroom and down the hall. The house was dark and silent. As I approached the living room, I saw a faint glow coming from under the door. I paused. Who would be up at this hour? I pushed the door open, a tiny crack. It was Mark. He was sitting on the sofa with his laptop open. The screen cast a pale blue light on his face. He was typing intently. He must have heard the floorboard creak, because he looked up suddenly. When he saw me, his eyes widened in surprise. He slammed the laptop shut with a loud clap. The sound echoed in the silent house. It was a guilty sound. "Sarah," he said. His voice was strained. "What are you doing up?" "I couldn't sleep," I said, walking into the room. "I was getting some water." "What are you doing?" "Just some work," he said quickly. Too quickly. "I couldn't sleep either. I thought I'd get a head start on some emails." It was a plausible excuse. He did sometimes work late, but his reaction, the way he had slammed the computer shut, felt wrong. It felt like he was hiding something. I stood there, looking at him. I wanted to press him. I wanted to ask him to show me what he was working on, but I knew it would start a fight. He would accuse me of not trusting him, and maybe he would be right. I had no proof of anything, just a cruel whisper from a woman who hated me and a gut feeling that something was terribly wrong. "Okay," I said softly. "Don't stay up too late." "I won't," he said. He did not offer to show me his screen. He did not try to reassure me. He just sat there, holding the closed laptop like a shield. I went to the kitchen and got my glass of water. My hand was shaking so much that I spilled some on the counter. I drank the water in slow, deliberate sips, trying to calm the frantic beating of my heart. When I went back to the living room, he was gone. The room was dark. He had gone back to bed. I knew then that he was hiding something. The first piece of real evidence, as flimsy as it was, had just fallen into place. The next day, things got worse. Clara was relentless. She had decided to make my life a living hell. At breakfast, she made a comment in front of everyone. "Sarah looks tired this morning," she said, her voice dripping with fake sympathy. "I hope you're getting enough rest, dear. It's so important. Take care of yourself." I knew what she was doing. She was pointing out the dark circles under my eyes. She was letting everyone know that her words had affected me. She was painting me as the stressed, paranoid wife. Mark shot her a warning look, but he didn't say anything to defend me. He just looked uncomfortable. His silence was a betrayal in itself. Later, I was walking by the patio when I overheard Clara talking to one of the cousins, a woman named Linda. Clara was not whispering. She wanted me to hear. "It's such a shame," she said, her voice full of dramatic sorrow. "Poor Sarah. She tries so hard to keep him happy, but some men just can't be kept on a leash. They have needs, you know." Linda murmured something in response that I couldn't hear, but Clara's words were loud and clear. They were designed to humiliate me, to isolate me, to make me feel powerless. She wasn't just telling me my husband was cheating. She was announcing it to the whole family, one person at a time. This was a public execution, and she was the executioner. I walked away before they could see me. My anger was so intense it made me feel dizzy. This was not just about Mark anymore. This was about Clara. She was a bully, a manipulator, and a sadist. And I was her target. The need for proof became an obsession. I could not fight back with suspicions and feelings. I needed cold, hard facts. I needed a weapon. My chance came that afternoon. Mark went to take a shower before dinner. He left his phone on the nightstand. It was plugged in, charging. My heart started pounding in my chest. This was it. This was my opportunity. I felt a pang of guilt. I had never gone through his phone before. I had always believed that privacy was important in a marriage, but he had forfeited his right to privacy. Clara's cruelty had burned away all my old beliefs about trust and respect. I walked over to his side of the bed. I picked up the phone. It felt heavy in my hand. I unlocked it. His passcode was our anniversary date. The irony was sickening. I opened his text messages. My hands were trembling. I scrolled through the list of recent conversations. There were messages from his dad, his sister, a few friends. Nothing seemed out of place. And then I saw it. A name I did not recognize. Jessica. It was not my friend Jessica. The profile picture was of a woman I had never seen before. She was blonde and smiling. I opened the message thread. My blood ran cold. The messages went back for weeks. They were flirty and full of private jokes. He had sent her pictures of himself at the gym. She had sent him pictures of her in a new dress. They talked about everything. Their jobs, their friends, their frustrations. They were intimate in a way that he and I had not been for a long time. Then I saw the messages from the past few days, while we had been on this perfect family vacation. Her. Are you surviving the family ordeal? Him. Barely. It's so boring. I wish you were here. Her. Me too. We could have our own fun. Him. Don't tempt me. I can't wait for this to be over. I'll see you as soon as I get back. Her. Promise? Him. Promise. I miss you. I felt like I couldn't breathe. The words on the screen blurred through my tears. It was real. All of it. The late-night texts, the secret smiles at his phone, the distant behavior. It all made a horrible, perfect sense now. He was cheating on me, and he was lying to my face every single day. The pain was a physical thing. It was a sharp, stabbing pain in my chest that made it hard to draw a breath. It was the pain of 1,000 small betrayals, all culminating in this one undeniable truth. I heard the shower turn off. I had to move fast. I quickly took screenshots of the most damning messages. I sent them to my own phone. Then I deleted the sent message from his phone. I closed the app and put the phone back on the nightstand, exactly where I had found it. I wiped my tears away with the back of my hand. I walked out of the bedroom and into the bathroom down the hall. I locked the door and slid down to the floor. I put my head in my hands and finally let myself cry. I cried for my broken heart, for my shattered trust, for the man I thought I knew and the marriage I thought I had. I cried until I had no tears left. When the tears stopped, something else took their place. A cold, hard anger. An anger at Mark for his betrayal, and an anger at Clara for her cruelty. She had been right, but she had not told me the truth to help me. She had told me to hurt me. She had reveled in my potential pain. And now that the pain was real, I knew I could not let either of them win. I would not be the weeping, broken wife. I would not be the victim in their sick little drama. I stood up and looked at myself in the mirror. My eyes were red and swollen. I looked like a victim, but I did not feel like one anymore. I felt like a fighter. And I was just getting started. I forced myself to go to dinner that night. It was one of the hardest things I'd ever had to do. I had to sit at a table with the man who was betraying me and the woman who was enjoying my pain. I had to pretend that everything was normal. I had to make small talk. I had to smile. Every bite of food felt like chewing on sand. Every cheerful voice felt like a personal insult. Mark was sitting next to me. He put his hand on my knee under the table. It was meant to be a gesture of affection. A few days ago, it would have made me feel loved. Now it made my skin crawl. I wanted to pull away, to scream at him not to touch me, but I didn't. I let his hand stay there. I gave him a small, weak smile. I had to maintain the illusion. My plan was just beginning to form, and it required me to be the perfect, unsuspecting wife. Clara was watching me from across the table. She had a look of smug curiosity on her face. She was trying to gauge my reaction. She was looking for signs of a crack in my composure. I made sure she found none. I met her gaze and held it for a moment. I did not look away. I did not look sad or angry. I looked neutral. I gave her nothing. I could see the flicker of disappointment in her eyes. She had expected a bigger explosion. She had expected tears and accusations. My calm was frustrating her. Good. Let her be frustrated. Let her wonder what I was thinking. After dinner, I excused myself. I said I had a headache. It wasn't a lie. My head was pounding from the stress and the unshed tears. I went back to our room and closed the door. I took out my laptop. The text messages were a start, but they weren't enough. I needed more. I needed irrefutable proof. I needed a mountain of evidence so large that Mark couldn't possibly deny it or explain it away. I logged into our shared credit card account. My heart was beating fast. I was afraid of what I would find. I started scrolling through the recent statements. I looked for anything that seemed out of place. It didn't take long. There were dozens of charges I didn't recognize. Dinners at expensive restaurants in our city. Restaurants I had never been to. A charge for a florist for a bouquet of flowers I'd never received. A charge from a jewelry store for a necklace I had never seen. And then I found the worst one. A charge from a boutique hotel. A hotel in our own city. It was for a one-night stay about a month ago. On a Tuesday. I remembered that Tuesday. Mark had told me he had to work late. He had a big project deadline. He had come home after midnight looking exhausted. He had told me how sorry he was. I had told him I understood. I had believed him. I felt like such a fool. The lies were so blatant, so shameless. He hadn't even tried to be clever about it. He had used our shared credit card. Did he think I would never look? Or did he just not care? I took screenshots of every single suspicious charge. I saved them all to a secure folder on my laptop. Each screenshot was another brick in the wall I was building around my heart. Each piece of evidence was another nail in the coffin of my marriage. The pain was still there, a dull, constant ache. But it was being overshadowed by a new feeling, a feeling of cold, clear purpose. I knew I had to confront him, but not yet. A direct confrontation now would be messy and emotional. It would give him the chance to lie, to manipulate, to gaslight me. He would try to make it my fault. He would say I was crazy for going through his phone and our credit card statements. And Clara would be there, watching from the sidelines, soaking it all in. I would not give them that satisfaction. No, my confrontation would be calculated. It would be public. It would be on my terms. I would choose the time and the place. And when it happened, there would be no room for lies or denials. There would only be the truth, laid bare for everyone to see. The next morning, I decided to test the waters. I needed to see how he would react to a small, gentle push. We were in the kitchen making coffee. It was just the two of us. I decided to ask him about one of the charges. I chose a seemingly innocent one. "Hey," I said, trying to sound casual. "I was looking at our credit card bill yesterday. What was that dinner at La Lune a few weeks ago? I don't remember going there." His body went rigid. He did not look at me. He kept his eyes on the coffee maker. "Oh, that," he said. His voice was a little too nonchalant. "That was a work dinner. I took a client out." "A client?" I asked. "Which one? I thought you usually take them to the steakhouse." He finally turned to look at me. His eyes were cold. "It was a new client. They wanted to try something different." "Why are you asking so many questions, Sarah? It's just a dinner." "I'm just curious," I said, keeping my voice light. "It's an expensive place. I was just wondering." "Well, now you know," he said, his tone sharp and defensive. "It was work. Can we drop it now? You're starting to sound paranoid." Paranoid. There it was. The classic gaslighter's defense. He was turning it around on me. He was making me the problem. He was making my reasonable question into an irrational accusation. It was a textbook move, and it confirmed everything. He was not just a cheater. He was a liar and a manipulator. His defensiveness told me everything I needed to know. I had my confirmation. I knew I couldn't push any further right now. So I backed off. "Okay," I said, forcing a smile. "Sorry. I didn't mean to sound like I was interrogating you." He seemed to relax a little. "It's fine," he said, but he still wouldn't meet my eyes. He took his coffee and walked out of the room. I stood there in the kitchen, my own coffee growing cold in my hands. The conversation had been short, but it had been incredibly revealing. He was guilty, and he knew it, and he was willing to lie and attack me to cover it up. The last shred of hope I had been clinging to, the tiny part of me that thought maybe there was a misunderstanding, finally died. There was no misunderstanding. There was only betrayal. I felt a desperate need for an ally. I was surrounded by his family. His mother, I knew, would take his side no matter what. She had always thought he could do no wrong. His father would just want to avoid conflict. His sister was close with Clara. I was completely alone on this island of vipers. I thought about talking to his mother, my mother-in-law, Joan. A small, foolish part of me hoped that she, as a woman and a mother, might offer some support. Maybe she would be shocked by her son's behavior. Maybe she would help me. I found her reading a book on the porch. I sat down next to her. "Joan, can I talk to you for a minute?" I asked. "Of course, dear," she said, putting her book down. "What is it?" I decided to be vague. I didn't want to show her my proof yet. I just wanted to see how she would react to the idea. "I'm a little worried about Mark," I said. "He's been acting distant lately, and Clara said something to me that has me concerned." Joan sighed. A long, weary sigh. "Oh, Sarah," she said, her voice full of condescending pity. "You can't listen to Clara. You know how she is. She just likes to stir the pot. She's always been jealous of Mark's happiness." "But what if she's right?" I pressed. "What if there's something going on?" She patted my hand. It was a gesture that was meant to be comforting, but it felt dismissive. "Mark loves you," she said firmly. "He would never do anything to hurt you. You're just being too sensitive. This is a stressful trip with everyone here. You're probably just imagining things. Don't let Clara's games get into your head." Her words were like a slap in the face. She hadn't even considered the possibility that I might be right. She had dismissed my concerns out of hand. She had called me sensitive. She had chosen her son over me without a moment's hesitation. She was not an ally. She was an enabler. She was part of the problem. She was part of the system of denial and silence that allowed men like Mark to get away with their betrayals. I pulled my hand away from hers. "You're right," I said, my voice flat and emotionless. "I'm probably just being silly." "That's the spirit," she said, smiling. She picked up her book again. The conversation was over. I walked away from her, my heart heavy with disappointment. I was well and truly alone. There was no one in this family who would help me. No one who would take my side. If I was going to get justice, I would have to get it for myself. The last bit of softness in me hardened into steel. They had all made their choice. They had chosen to protect Mark, to enable his lies, to dismiss my pain. And in doing so, they had all become my enemies. My plan was no longer just about exposing Mark. It was about exposing all of them. It was about tearing down the facade of this perfect, happy family and showing them the ugly truth that lay beneath. That night, I realized the full scope of what I was up against. It wasn't just Mark's affair. It was the family culture that allowed it to happen. The culture of looking the other way, of prioritizing appearances over honesty, of protecting the men in the family at the expense of the women. Clara wasn't an isolated problem. She was a symptom of a much deeper sickness. She was just the one who was cruel enough to say the quiet part out loud. This realization shifted something in me. My goal was no longer just to expose a cheater. It was to hold a mirror up to the entire family. I needed to understand Clara's motivation more deeply. Why was she so invested in my misery? Jealousy, yes, but it felt like more than that. It felt personal. It felt strategic. I started to think back over the years. Clara had always pushed another woman on Mark. Her friend's daughter, a woman named Emily. Clara would bring her up constantly, even after Mark and I were married. "Emily just got a big promotion," she would say. "She's so successful, and still so beautiful." The implication was always clear. Emily was the one he should have married. I was the mistake. Destroying my marriage wasn't just about hurting me. It was about proving she had been right all along. It was about clearing the way for Mark to be with someone she approved of. It was a twisted, long-term game of control, and I was just a pawn she was trying to sweep off the board. The coldness of her ambition was breathtaking. I needed to talk to someone who was on my side, someone who was outside of this toxic family bubble. I went for a walk on the beach, my phone in my hand. I called my best friend, Jessica, the real Jessica, the one who had been my maid of honor. the one who knew me better than anyone. "Hey," I said when she answered. My voice broke on the first word. "Sarah, what's wrong?" she asked immediately. She could always tell when something was wrong. I told her everything. I started with Clara's whisper by the pool. I told her about Mark on the laptop, the text messages, the credit card statements, the conversation with her mother-in-law. I poured it all out, the words tumbling over each other in a rush of pain and anger. Jessica listened patiently. She didn't interrupt. She just let me talk until I had nothing left to say. When I was finished, there was a long silence on the other end of the line. "Are you there?" I asked, my voice small. "I'm here," she said. Her voice was quiet, but it was simmering with rage. "I am going to kill him. I'm going to fly there, and I am going to strangle him with his own cheating hands." Her fierce loyalty made me want to cry again, but this time with gratitude. "Don't do that," I said, managing a small, watery laugh. "I need you for my getaway driver, not for my prison visitor." "Fine," she said, "but I'm serious, Sarah. This is monstrous, all of them. That aunt of his is a demon, and his mother, unbelievable. What are you going to do?" "I don't know," I admitted. "I want to scream. I want to pack my bags and leave, but I also want to... I don't know. I want to make them pay. All of them." "Good," Jessica said, her voice firm. "Don't just get sad. Get even. You have the proof. You have the power now. They think you're weak. They think you're the sensitive little wife who will just cry in a corner. You need to show them who you really are." Her words were like a splash of cold water. She was right. I had been so focused on the pain of the betrayal that I hadn't fully realized the power I now held. I had the evidence. I had the truth. They had the secrets and the lies. In any battle, the truth is the ultimate weapon. "You're right," I said, my voice stronger now. "I need a plan." "Yes, you do," she said. "Don't confront him alone. Don't do it in private. He'll just lie and twist it. You need to do it in a way that he can't escape, in a way that they all have to see him for what he is." We talked for over an hour. We brainstormed ideas. Jessica was brilliant. She was strategic and ruthless in a way that I needed. She helped me see the situation not as a personal tragedy, but as a strategic challenge. By the time I hung up the phone, I felt like a different person. The hurt was still there, a deep, throbbing wound, but it was now surrounded by a wall of cold, hard resolve. I knew what I had to do. The vacation was scheduled to last for another 4 days. I would use that time. I would play my part. I would be the loving, slightly tired wife. I would smile at Clara's barbs. I would endure Joan's condescending platitudes. I would let Mark touch me without flinching. I would gather more information. I would refine my plan. And then, on the last night, I would bring it all crashing down. A new mystery began to consume me. It wasn't enough to know that Mark was cheating and that Clara was a monster. I needed to understand the connection. How did she know? Mark and Clara were not particularly close. He tolerated her because he had to. He certainly wouldn't have confided in her. So, how did she get the information? This question was important. The answer would be another weapon in my arsenal. It would reveal the network of whispers and alliances that worked against me. I started watching everyone more closely. I became an anthropologist, studying the strange customs and social structures of this toxic tribe. I noticed that Clara spent a lot of time talking to her son, David. David was a few years younger than Mark. They were cousins, and they had always been close. Mark trusted David. If Mark was going to confide in anyone in the family, it would be him. And David was a mama's boy. He told Clara everything. A possible chain of information began to form in my mind. Mark tells David. David tells Clara. This was a theory, but I needed proof. I needed to get David to admit it. This would be delicate. David was weak-willed, but he wasn't malicious like his mother. He was just easily manipulated. I couldn't confront him aggressively. I had to play on his sympathy. I waited for the right moment. It came 2 days before the end of the trip. I found David alone on the deck, looking out at the ocean. He looked troubled. I suspected he felt guilty. He knew what his mother had done, and he knew it was wrong. I walked over and stood beside him. I didn't say anything for a long time. I just looked at the waves. Finally, I spoke, my voice soft and full of carefully crafted sadness. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" He jumped a little, startled. "Oh, Sarah, I didn't see you there. Yeah, it's beautiful." "I used to love the ocean," I said, still looking at the horizon. "It always made me feel so calm, but I don't feel calm right now. I feel lost." He shifted uncomfortably. He knew this was not just a casual conversation about the view. "I'm sorry," he mumbled. "Is everything okay?" "No, David," I said, finally turning to look at him. I made sure my eyes were filled with unshed tears. "Everything is not okay. Your mom said something to me the other day. Something about Mark." His face paled. He looked like a cornered animal. "My mom says a lot of things," he said, trying to deflect. "You can't take her seriously." "I think I have to take this seriously," I said, my voice trembling slightly. "She told me that Mark is cheating on me. Is it true, David? Please, I just need to know the truth. I feel like I'm going crazy." He couldn't meet my eyes. He stared at his feet. I don't know anything about that," he lied. It was a weak, unconvincing lie. This was the critical moment. I decided to take a gamble. I decided to reveal a piece of my hand. "I know about Jessica," I said quietly. His head snapped up. His eyes were wide with shock. He had not expected that. He had thought the secret was safe. His face told me everything. He knew. He absolutely knew. "How?" he started to say, then stopped. "It doesn't matter how I know," I said, pressing my advantage. "What matters is that Clara knew, and she told me." "How did she know, David? Mark wouldn't have told her. So, how did she find out?" "He was trapped. He knew that I knew the secret. And he knew that the only way Clara could have known was through him. He looked miserable. He looked ashamed. And in that moment, I almost felt sorry for him. But I pushed the feeling away. He was not a victim here. He was a collaborator. His weakness had given his mother the weapon she had used to try and destroy me. "He told me," David finally whispered. His voice was barely audible over the sound of the waves. "Mark told me. He was having a hard time. He needed someone to talk to. He made me promise not to tell anyone." "But you told your mother," I said. It wasn't a question. It was a statement of fact. He nodded, his head hanging in shame. "I was worried about him," he said, trying to justify his betrayal. "I asked her for advice. I thought she could help. I made her promise not to say anything. I never thought she would. I never thought she would just go and tell you like that. I'm so sorry, Sarah." "Sorry doesn't fix this, David," I said, my voice turning hard. "The performance was over. You broke your cousin's trust, and you broke your promise. You gave your mother a loaded gun, and you knew exactly who she was going to point it at. You knew how she feels about me." He had no answer for that. He just stood there, looking at the floor, the picture of pathetic guilt. "I need you to do something for me," I said. He looked up, a flicker of hope in his eyes. He probably thought I was going to ask him to help me fix things, to talk to Mark. He was wrong. "I need you to say nothing," I said. "Don't tell Mark we had this conversation. Don't tell your mother. You are going to act as if everything is perfectly normal. Do you understand?" He nodded numbly. "Yes," he whispered. "Good," I said. I turned and walked away, leaving him alone on the deck with his shame. I now had the final piece of the puzzle. I had Mark's betrayal confirmed by texts and receipts. I had Clara's malicious intent confirmed by her own words and actions, and now I had the link between them, David's weak-willed complicity. I had the full story, the whole ugly, sordid truth. My plan was now complete. The family had a tradition. On the last night of any big vacation, they would have a formal farewell dinner. Everyone would get dressed up, they would cook a special meal, and after the meal, they would go around the table and each person would give a little speech. They would talk about their favorite memories from the trip, what they were thankful for, and their hopes for the future. It was meant to be a heartwarming tradition, but I was going to turn it into a trial. It was the perfect stage, a captive audience. A tradition of speaking from the heart. My speech would be one they would never forget. I would serve the truth as the final course of the meal, and it would be a bitter pill for all of them to swallow. The next 2 days were a blur of fake smiles and forced pleasantries. I was an actress, playing the greatest role of my life. I was the loving wife, the dutiful daughter-in-law, the cheerful vacationer. No one suspected a thing. Mark seemed to have forgotten our tense conversation in the kitchen. He was relaxed and happy, no doubt looking forward to seeing his mistress when he got home. Clara continued to watch me, a smug, predatory glint in her eyes. She thought I was a fool. She thought I had chosen to ignore her warning to bury my head in the sand. She thought she had broken my spirit. She had no idea that I was not broken. I was forged. The final night arrived. The house was filled with the smell of roasting meat and garlic. Everyone was dressed up. The women were in dresses, the men in collared shirts. It was a festive, celebratory atmosphere. I wore a simple black dress. I wanted to look elegant and composed. I did my makeup carefully, covering the dark circles under my eyes. When I looked in the mirror, I saw a woman I barely recognized. She looked calm. She looked strong. She looked dangerous. Mark came up behind me and put his arms around my waist. "You look beautiful," he said, kissing my neck. I had to fight every instinct in my body not to recoil. I forced myself to lean back against him. I smiled at our reflection in the mirror. We looked like the perfect couple, a happy, successful, loving pair. It was all a lie. "Thank you," I said. "You look handsome, too." We went downstairs and joined the others. The dinner table was set beautifully, with candles and a fancy tablecloth. Everyone was laughing and talking. It was a scene of perfect family harmony. The hypocrisy was suffocating. We sat down to eat. The food was delicious, but I could barely taste it. I moved the food around on my plate, taking small bites, trying to look normal. Mark was seated next to me. Clara was directly across from me. Her eyes never left my face. She was waiting. I knew she was expecting me to be quiet and sullen. She was expecting the sad, defeated wife. I gave her the opposite. I was bright and engaging. I asked people about their plans for the fall. I told a funny story about a work project. I laughed. My laughter sounded strange and brittle in the festive room, but no one else seemed to notice. Finally, the meal was over. The plates were cleared. Coffee was served. Mark's father, a man named George, tapped his glass with a spoon. "All right, everyone," he said, beaming. "It's time for our little tradition. A few words from each of us to close out another wonderful family trip." He gave a short, rambling speech about the importance of family. It was full of cliches and empty platitudes. It made me want to gag. Then it was Joan's turn. She talked about how wonderful it was to have all her chicks back in the nest. She looked at Mark and me and said how happy she was to see us so in love. The irony was so thick, I could have cut it with a knife. One by one, they went around the table. Cousins and siblings shared light-hearted memories. It was all so pleasant, so fake. My turn was getting closer. My heart began to beat a little faster. I had a small, neat stack of papers on my lap, hidden by the tablecloth. It was my evidence, the credit card statements, the printouts of the text messages. Then it was Clara's turn. She stood up. She had a theatrical air about her. She looked around the table, a sad, wise smile on her face. "I want to talk about honesty," she began. She looked directly at me. "I believe that in a family, honesty is the most important thing, even when the truth is difficult, even when it's painful. We have a duty to protect each other from lies and deceit, because secrets are a poison. They can rot a family from the inside out." It was a masterful performance. She was painting herself as the brave truth teller, the guardian of the family's integrity. She was twisting her malicious act into a noble one, and she was daring me to challenge her. She was throwing down the gauntlet. Oh, I would pick it up. She sat down to a smattering of polite applause. She looked at me, her eyes gleaming with triumph. She thought she had won. She thought she had delivered the final, crushing blow. Then, George said, "Sarah, dear, it's your turn." The entire table turned to look at me. The room was silent. This was it. The moment I had been planning for. The moment of truth. I took a slow, deep breath. I stood up. I placed my small stack of papers on the table in front of me. "Thank you, George," I said. My voice was clear and steady. It did not shake. "Thank you all for a truly memorable trip. I've learned so much this week." I paused. I let the silence hang in the air. I looked around the table, making eye contact with each person. Joan, George, David, Clara, and finally, Mark. "I've learned about the importance of family," I continued, my voice dripping with irony that only I could understand. And as Clara so eloquently said, I've learned about the importance of honesty. I picked up the top piece of paper. It was a printout of the hotel reservation. "Mark," I said, my voice suddenly sharp and direct, "I want to thank you. You've taught me so much about love, and you've taught me so much about secrets." His face went white. He knew. In that instant, he knew that his world was about to end. He started to stand up, to say something, but I held up my hand to stop him. "For example," I said, my voice ringing through the silent room, "I learned about the secret you were keeping on the night of Tuesday, June 14th. You told me you were working late, but you weren't, were you? You were at the Hotel Elysian, room 712, a lovely little boutique hotel. I'm sure your client enjoyed it very much." A collective gasp went through the room. George and Joan stared at Mark, their mouths open in shock. Mark looked like he had been punched in the stomach. He sank back into his chair, speechless. I wasn't done. I picked up the next piece of paper, a credit card statement. And I learned about all the other secrets. The secret dinners at La Lune, the secret flowers I never received, the secret necklace you bought at Tiffany's. You've been a very busy man, Mark. Mark finally found his voice. It was a weak, desperate whisper. "Sarah, please, not here. Don't do this." "Don't do this?" I repeated, my voice rising with an anger I could no longer contain. "You did this, Mark. You did this to me, to us. You lied to me every single day, and you did it while using my money from our joint account to fund your affair." Tears were streaming down Joan's face. George looked like he was going to be sick. The cousins were staring at their plates, avoiding eye contact with anyone. Then I turned my attention to Clara. She was watching the scene unfold, a look of horrified shock on her face. This was not the drama she had wanted. She had wanted to see me cry. She had not expected me to fight back with an arsenal of facts. "And Aunt Clara," I said, my voice dripping with venom, "I have to give you a special thank you. You were the one who started this whole journey of discovery. You came to me by the pool and you told me my husband was cheating on me. You were right. He was." I paused, letting her absorb the shock. "But you didn't tell me because you were concerned about me, did you? You didn't tell me because you believe in honesty. You told me because you wanted to hurt me. You told me with a smile on your face. You enjoyed it. You wanted to watch me fall apart." Clara jumped to her feet. Her face was red and contorted with rage. "How dare you!" she shrieked. "You ungrateful little witch! You're the one tearing this family apart with your lies and your drama." "My lies?" I asked, my voice dangerously calm. "I have receipts, Clara. I have dates. I have times. What do you have? Just your own poison." I then turned to David. He was as white as a sheet. He looked like he wanted the floor to swallow him whole. "And David," I said, "thank you for teaching me about loyalty. Mark trusted you. He confided in you. And you ran straight to your mother. You broke his trust, and you broke your promise. You are just as much a part of this as they are." That was when the screaming really started. Clara completely lost control. She was shrieking at me, calling me every name she could think of. She was a cornered animal, lashing out with pure, unadulterated fury. She had been exposed. Her carefully constructed image as the concerned matriarch had been shattered. Everyone at that table now saw her for what she was, a cruel, malicious manipulator. Mark was trying to get me to sit down, to be quiet. Sarah, stop it, you're making a scene. I'm making a scene? I said, turning to him. My voice was low and intense. Present, tense. This is happening now. You have been having an affair for months. Your aunt has been psychologically torturing me. Your cousin betrayed you. Your mother called me paranoid. And I'm the one making a scene. No, Mark, I'm not making a scene. I am ending one. I looked around the devastated room. The perfect family dinner was in ruins. The festive atmosphere was gone, replaced by a thick, choking silence, punctuated only by Clara's hysterical sobs. I picked up my purse. I had one more thing to do. I took out my phone. I had been quietly recording the entire exchange. I held it up. Just so we're all clear, I said. I have everything. The text from your girlfriend, Jessica, the hotel receipts, David's confession about how you knew Clara. And now, this lovely little performance. You all wanted a show. Now you have one. I turned and walked out of the room. I did not look back. I walked out the front door, into the cool night air. I did not have a car. I did not have a plan for where I was going, but I had never felt more free in my entire life. I had walked into that dinner as a victim. I walked out as a survivor. The war was not over, but I had just won the most important battle. I had won my self-respect back. And that was a victory worth more than anything. I walked down the long driveway of the rental house. The sound of the ocean was a comforting roar in the distance. My phone buzzed in my hand. It was Mark. I declined the call. It buzzed again. Another call from Mark. I declined it again. Then a text message appeared. Sarah, please come back. We can talk about this. Talk about it? What was there to talk about? I had laid out the facts. There was nothing left to discuss. I put my phone on silent and slipped it into my purse. I did not want to talk to him. I did not want to talk to any of them. I just wanted to breathe. I reached the end of the driveway and stood on the quiet coastal road. The air smelled of salt and night-blooming jasmine. I had no idea where to go. I started walking. The physical act of moving, of putting one foot in front of the other, was calming. It felt like I was walking away from the ruins of my old life and toward something new. After a few minutes, a car pulled up beside me. It was one of Mark's cousins, a woman named Laura. She had always been kind to me, in a quiet, reserved way. She had stayed silent during the dinner, her face a mask of shock. She rolled down the passenger window. Sarah? Get in, she said. Her voice was gentle. I hesitated for a moment. I wasn't sure I could trust anyone from that family. But I looked at her face and I saw genuine concern in her eyes. No judgment, no pity, just concern. I got in the car. We drove in silence for a while. I just stared out the window at the dark shapes of the houses and trees passing by. Are you okay? She finally asked. No, I said honestly, but I will be. I'm so sorry, she said. I'm so sorry for what Mark did and for what Clara did. That was monstrous. She's a monstrous person, I said, my voice flat. Yes, she is, Laura agreed. We all knew she was difficult. We all knew she didn't like you. But I don't think any of us understood the depths of her cruelty until tonight. You were so brave. What you did in there. It was terrifying, but it was incredible. Her words were a balm on my raw nerves. To have someone from his family validate my experience, to acknowledge the truth of what I had been through, meant more than she could ever know. Where can I take you? She asked. Is there a hotel nearby? I asked. Yes, there's a small inn a few towns over, she said. It's quiet. I'll take you there. When we got to the inn, she insisted on paying for my room. It's the least I can do, she said. The family owes you so much more than this. Before she left, she gave me a hug. If you need anything at all, you call me. I mean it. I'm on your side. I checked into my room. It was small and simple, but it was clean and quiet. It was a sanctuary. I locked the door, and for the first time in days, I felt safe. I took a long, hot shower. I washed away the smell of the fancy dinner. the feeling of Mark's hands on my skin, the suffocating atmosphere of that house. I felt like I was washing away my old life. Later that night, Mark found me. Laura must have told him where I was. There was a knock on my door. I knew it was him. I ignored it. He knocked again, harder this time. "Sarah, I know you're in there," he called through the door. "Please, just let me in. We need to talk." I opened the door, but I blocked the entrance with my body. I did not invite him in. He looked terrible. His eyes were red and swollen. His clothes were rumpled. He looked like a man whose world had just been shattered. Good. Now he knew how it felt. "There's nothing to talk about, Mark," I said, my voice cold and even. "Yes, there is," he pleaded. "I can explain." "Explain what?" I asked. "Can you explain the hotel? Can you explain the texts? Can you explain the lies? There is no explanation, Mark. There are only choices. And you made yours." "I messed up," he said. It was a weak, pathetic admission. "I messed up so badly. I was stupid. But I love you, Sarah. I love you, not her. It was just a mistake." "A mistake," I laughed, a bitter, humorless sound. "A mistake is taking the wrong turn on the highway, Mark. A mistake is forgetting to buy milk at the store. A months-long affair with lies and secret trips and gifts is not a mistake. It is a campaign of betrayal. You didn't just mess up. You systematically dismantled our marriage, piece by piece, lie by lie." He started to cry. Real, racking sobs. A part of me, the part that had loved him for so many years, felt a flicker of pity, but I extinguished it. His tears were not for me. They were for himself. He was crying because he had been caught. He was crying because his comfortable life was over. "I'm sorry," he choked out. "I am so, so sorry. I'll do anything to fix this. I'll go to therapy. I'll cut off all contact with her. I'll never speak to my aunt again. Please, Sarah, don't leave me." I looked at him, this broken, weeping man in the hallway. I felt nothing. No love, no anger. Just a vast, empty distance. He was a stranger to me now. "It's over, Mark," I said. The words were simple, but they were final. "I am leaving you. As soon as we get home, I'm packing my things, and I am filing for divorce." He looked at me, his eyes wide with disbelief. He genuinely thought he could fix this. He thought an apology and a few tears would be enough to erase months of lies. He had always underestimated me. He had seen me as the quiet, accommodating wife. He had never seen the steel underneath. "You don't mean that," he said, his voice shaking. "I have never meant anything more in my life," I said. I closed the door in his face. I leaned against it, listening to him beg and plead on the other side. After a few minutes, he finally gave up. I heard his footsteps retreating down the hall. The rest of the vacation was a blur. Laura helped me arrange a flight home a day early. I did not go back to the rental house. I did not see any of them again. Laura brought my suitcase to me at the hotel. "How is it back there?" I asked her. She shook her head. "It's a war zone," she said. "Clara is blaming you for everything. She's telling everyone you're a hysterical liar who set her up. David isn't speaking to her. My parents are furious with her. Your mother-in-law, Joan, is just crying, and your father-in-law is trying to pretend none of it happened. Mark is a ghost. He just sits and stares at the wall. You blew them up, Sarah. You really did." "They blew themselves up," I said. "I just lit the match." When I got home, the house felt strange. It was our house, filled with our shared memories, but it didn't feel like mine anymore. It felt like a museum of a life that was no longer real. I did exactly what I said I would do. I hired a lawyer. I filed for divorce. Mark tried to fight it at first. He called me dozens of times a day. He sent long, rambling emails full of apologies and promises. He showed up at my work. I got a restraining order. My lawyer was ruthless. I had the evidence. The recording from the dinner was particularly effective. It was clear who the aggressors were. It was clear that I had been pushed to my limit. In the end, Mark gave up. He agreed to all of my terms. I got the house. I got more than half of our savings. since I could prove he had spent marital funds on his affair. I got my freedom. The fallout in his family was immense. Laura kept me updated. Clara became a pariah. Many of the relatives, shocked by her public display of cruelty, cut her out of their lives. Her relationship with her son, David, was shattered. He was so ashamed of his role in the drama that he moved to another state. Joan and George's marriage became strained. Joan's refusal to see her son's faults had created a rift between them. The perfect family was broken, probably for good. As for Mark, he was left with the consequences of his actions. He lost his wife. He lost his house. He lost a significant amount of his money. And he lost the respect of many of the people who mattered to him. I heard through Laura that his affair with Jessica didn't last. Apparently, she wasn't interested in being with a man who came with so much baggage and so much family drama. He was alone. The last time I heard from Mark directly was about 6 months after the divorce was finalized. He sent me a short, bitter email. He told me that Clara was still blaming me for everything. She had convinced herself, and a few remaining loyal family members, that I was a manipulative monster who had orchestrated the whole thing to ruin her family. He said he was trying to move on, but it was hard. I read the email, and then I deleted it. It didn't matter what they thought of me. It didn't matter who they blamed. Their opinions were worthless. They could live in their toxic world of lies and denial. I was free of it. I sold the house. It had too many ghosts. I bought a small apartment in a new part of the city. I focused on my work. I reconnected with my friends. I started to heal. It was a slow process. Betrayal leaves deep scars, but for the first time in a long time, I felt at peace. I was no longer playing a part. I was no longer walking on eggshells. I was just myself. I learned a valuable lesson from that terrible vacation. I learned that keeping the peace is not worth losing your self-respect. I learned that you cannot change toxic people. You can only remove them from your life. I had spent years trying to be the person they wanted me to be. The quiet, smiling, accommodating wife. It had gotten me nothing but pain and disrespect. The moment I stopped being quiet, the moment I decided to fight back, was the moment I got my life back. They thought my anger was my weakness. They were wrong. It was my strength. It was the fire that burned away all the lies and left only the hard, clean truth. They had pushed me too far. They had underestimated me. And they had paid the price. They had learned, in the most public and humiliating way possible, what it feels like to be small. And I had learned what it feels like to be free.